porters runs as well. So that's another way of getting out to the community. When it was Easter and Christmas, we had a particular opportunity to get them to read Daily Bread or get them to read something in English, telling them about the gospel, and Manolo gave them bilingual New Testaments. So it seems to have frozen up on us again. Oh, there we are. We've got Jose Luis and Noemi, originally from Galicia in the north of Spain. Jose Luis was a fisherman and ended up becoming a fisher of men. He was converted, went to Bible college, and is now in Moral de Calatrava, which is a base where another of the churches is. And they're his sons and his in-laws. The in-laws are both quite sick, but his sons, unfortunately, or sadly rather, they no longer follow the ways of the Lord. They went to university and they're no longer, well, they don't profess to be Christian, so Jose Luis asked for prayer for them. They have a young woman called Mariana, who is from Ukraine. She, oh dear, I suppose anybody can give me some water, please. Should have been prepared. So Mariana went to Moral with her sister. Her sister returned, but Mariana decided she should be. The Lord wanted her to be used by him in Moral. So she teaches the children a Bible club using English. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So they're reaching out now to the children in Moral through English again. Sorry. They also have a local radio program to teach and preach the gospel. David.
This is a typical scene of an evangelistic campaign. The pastors have found it quite useful to concentrate the bulk of the evangelistic work into the summer months, when people are on holiday, they're more inclined to. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah, so if you can imagine something that looks a little bit like a United Beach Missions evangelistic campaign, but in Spain they don't have a beach within 300 kilometres, so they tend to concentrate their efforts onto the town square. Most towns are built around town square, which is a big public place. You'll find that's where usually the highest point of the town, and they'll build a large Catholic church there, and that's where the town hall will be, and that's where this is happening there. We call it the evangelistic campaign, where the young people in the church all get involved. All of the churches are really too small to be able to support a major evangelistic campaign, but with the three churches, the church in Santa Cruz, Manzanares, and Moral, and also with the church that used to be a mission church in Valdepeñas, but they're no longer part of the mission, simply because they realised that they were big enough to support themselves financially, so they became independent of the mission, which is what we're always hoping to do. We want the churches to be independent of the mission and function autonomously. But in this case, they still have very fond connections, and there's a lot of love between the mission and the Valdepeñas church, and they join us for our evangelistic campaign. So this is a combined effort, and that would be in Moral. What happens is that when people are relaxed, around the town square, there'll be various cafes and bars. So that the church will set up games for children. The children go along and they're hearing the gospel, but also their parents who are drinking and relaxing around the outside, they're also hearing the gospel, and they're taking interest in what the children are doing. Oh, was that me? So this is how we proceed, really. The young people are playing games with the children, attracting a crowd, and then the pastors come along and they'll do a short devotional evangelistic message. Thank you. And another means of reaching out to the people is through the holiday Bible clubs, where the churches open up, and again they play games and learn Bible stories, memory verses, probably much the same as you would do here, attract the young people along. And they've not been able to do that throughout the pandemic, so at last they're able to renew this evangelistic effort. One of the things that we probably missed out was that when Jose Luis, who was the fisherman, joined the mission, he trained to be sort of a gospel minister through a Bible ministry, a Bible college in Madrid, and it was called Cefavam. I can't remember exactly what it means, but now it's on Jose Luis's heart to restart the Cefavam course, but in the mission centre. So these are students who are part-time. It's a bit like a study program. It's a college, distance learning college. So the students come along for a Saturday and they'll have an intense day of lectures by a lecturer who's sent from the main college in Madrid. And then they're presented with various works to do and books to read for the next meeting. So this is how that they gain credits, and after a few years, I think it's a 4-year course, they qualify, and they can go back to their churches and be much more useful in evangelism, and some of them go on to be pastors, which is what we're always hoping for. So this is the Cefavam students, and they're training in the dining room of the college. And the last couple I'd like to introduce you to is Sergio and Chani, and that's their daughter Jennifer, and they adopted her. They've got their own grown-up children, but they adopted Jenny when she was just 2, and she has many, many health issues. So as Jackie was saying, she's still very much behind what you'd expect for a girl of her age. She can't seem to grasp abstract principles like time. So for her to know that God is in heaven, she just can't cope with that because it's something that's a bit abstract. She can only work on the obvious. They're also engaged in holiday Bible clubs, and this is a club that they're having in the church. They also in Santa Cruz they also have their own Bible club on a Monday evening. So some of these children will gain an appetite maybe for learning the Bible, and they'll come along to the Sunday evening or the Monday evening Bible study, and then they're hoping to integrate them into the church that way. It's hard work because as soon as they get to a certain age, they start finding other things to do, like football clubs, swimming clubs, and they sometimes lose interest. This is evangelism along the same lines, but this time it's in the Santa Cruz town square. The tall building to the right there is like the town hall, the Ayuntamiento, and they're on the far left slide is the book table where the churches will take along evangelistic literature and put it out and get people to take their own Bibles. And this is again, the picture on the left is actually showing, we're demonstrating how small the church is in Santa Cruz. And there's probably about a dozen people there, but I think there's about 6 people on that Sunday were from England on the Spanish experience, which is where we got interested in Spain. So that gives you some idea of how small the church is and how they're struggling. There's a guy in a red T-shirt. Now, he's a very interesting character. He's actually a man who suffers from chronic agoraphobia. He wasn't able to leave the house for 25 years, imagine that, because of his psychological fear of the outdoors. And one of the deacons, a man called Herman, he took him under his wing. He started to do his shopping first of all and encouraged him to go out and just come shopping with him. Herman was very careful to point out, if at any point you don't feel comfortable, we'll get in the car and go straight home. And gradually this man was able to get out shopping. And then Herman said, well, why don't you come to church with me? You'll be indoors and we'll hear some Bible stories. And Fernando started to go to church. And after a while he was converted. And that seemed to be open to him the window. He had a much more open view of the world, and he started wanting to go out. And during the summer, when we were out there this summer, we were helping with the evangelistic campaign, Jackie and myself. We had a day off. We went to a local lake area of natural beauty called the Lakes. And it's a bit like our Lake District, but nowhere near as large. And Fernando wanted to come along, and he was fascinated. He was so joyful. But here's a man who just went 10 miles away to an area of natural beauty he'd never seen before. He'd never been to the lakes, although he'd lived all of his life in that place. But that's a wonderful story of how the Lord opened his heart, and not only his heart, but his whole vision of the world. And now Fernando is an active member of the church. So we praise God for that. And this is the mission centre where Jackie and myself worked for 10 years. And there's what looks like a Don Quixote windmill there. It actually started life as a barbecue. And it just kept going up and up and up. And the doors open at the back of the windmill and there's a barbecue in there. Very important in Spain because they're very outdoors people. They have the weather for being outdoors. And we've just clipped Pepe and Lydia. They're on the far right of the far right picture, and that's Abigail, their daughter, and Josue, who's very active in the church, and he has a key role to play in the evangelistic activities. So please pray for Pepe, Lydia, Abby, and Josue as they work and live in the mission centre. During the summer, they can have up to 50 guests there, and I can assure you it gets quite manic at times. One of the ways that they do evangelism is they've tapped into an interest in handiworks and craft work. And there's Lydia in the far left photograph. She's teaching some of these ladies to do craft work, knitting, crochet, and all this sort of thing. And then halfway through, they have a coffee break, and Pepe comes in, and he reads a verse from the Bible and explains where the gospel is. So that's another way. I suppose in this country we'd call it something like knit and natter or coffee afternoon. But they're doing all these things as well to try and proclaim and explain the gospel. So there's the ladies' craft workshop. And this is a church retreat. The centre gets used by the 3 churches. Really, sometimes they need to take time out and have a break. They have fellowship together and maybe study a subject for concern. And there's 3 pastors. There's also a pastor there from an EMF church in Ciudad Real, a very large church. But in Spain, there are so few churches that they have to work together for support. And there's the famous Spanish paella. I used to call it paella, but of course the proper way of pronunciation is paella. And they're very fussy about their food. It's a big thing in Spain, so Jackie had to learn how to get it just right. And how can we help from this end of Europe? Well, we can pray, and that's where Jackie and myself may be able to help you. I know that Dennis gets the monthly prayer update, and if you'd like to receive one, maybe you can get a software copy over the internet, or we can send you a paper copy if you prefer, and that will help you to pray. We could. Some people choose to support financially. That's not for everybody. Not everybody likes to support that way. But again, we can be the doorway for you to be able to do that, and that's why we're here really to try and encourage mission awareness. It's my firm belief that as we become interested in what God is doing elsewhere in the world, the blessing comes straight back. Because this can be a very depressing country, can't it? A day of small things, nothing seems to happen in our church where we work hard and nothing seems to happen. But that shouldn't blind us to what God is doing in other places in the world. And God is active in Spain, an area where not long ago in the days of Franco, you could get put in jail for just carrying a Bible. But you see how now God has opened that up, and now you can go to church with a Bible under your arm, and you're not in fear of being locked up or caught by the police or even worse. And the years when Franco was a dictator were terrible, terrible years for the church. The church in Valdepeñas had to close for decades, really, because they were afraid to open the doors. And if someone was converted and they did want to be baptized, they had to smuggle them in through the neighbour's house, which was alongside the church. They had to smuggle them in, have a baptismal service with no hymns so that they couldn't be heard, and just sneak out again. So that was how hard things were. But of course, the prime help that we can be to the pastors in Spain is simply by praying for them. Sometimes people say to me, I pray for the work, and I point out, well, actually prayer is the work. Nothing's going to happen without prayer. Oh yes, just a brief summary of the things we could be praying for. There's the outreach in Morale Church via the radio work. There's the food distribution. They get food, as Jackie was explaining, from the International Food Bank. They package it up, and they have a list of people that are eligible for food aid. And people come into the church, they hear the gospel message, and they go away with their food. And any other help that the pastor can give them. Sometimes it's social help, sometimes it's help because they don't know how they can get their social benefits. So the pastor helps them, tells them where to go. So there's all sorts of things that the church is able to do to reach out to people. And then, of course, there's the children work, there's the holiday Bible clubs, which are just about finished, but there's the weekly Bible clubs on the evenings in Santa Cruz and Morale. And there's the preaching that goes on every week in the churches in Santa Cruz, Morale, and Manzanares. And Valdepeñas, although there's not a mission church any longer. So, without tiring you, we'll be able to answer any questions if there are any at this stage.
I know the answer, but how can you manage to take meetings out in the public, out on the street, whereas here we might have to go through various, I don't know, various things, but the idea of going out in a place like that, as I say, I know the answer, but other people might not, but I just wonder.
No. Well, until Franco died in the mid-70s, it would have been suicide to try and proclaim the gospel in the open air. But after Franco died, and I think it was in 1972, there was a government bill of the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and religious equality. So, in theory, as evangelicals, we can do anything we like. It's not illegal. And they have that now in Spain, the same as we do here. But if you're going to go into the town, the churches usually take some sound equipment with them to amplify the noise. And they're dependent on the town hall to supply some chairs so that people can sit and listen to the message, perhaps. And they need permission to go in and play games with the children. Now, the town hall may or they may not be supportive in doing that. There are certain towns, there's one in Villanueva de los Infantes, they're notorious for offering the permission because they have to and then withdrawing it. And they will say, oh, we said you could come, but actually there's going to be a peppercorn festival, so I'm sorry, you can't come now. And that happens quite frequently. The time where Manolo is trying to set up a church, he's trying to plant a church in Membria, just outside of Manzanares, they are almost impossible to get the town hall to agree. So this year, they were able to go in and they weren't allowed to use any amplification or distribute any tracts. So they went in and they did a litter pick and tidied up the town centre. And the town hall were quite impressed with that, and they're more inclined to let them go in again now. They can just go in and sing unaccompanied, and that's the way they're getting in, but they have to be very sensitive. So it's a bit like here, really. There is religious freedom on the surface, but things can get a bit awkward. Where they do seem to have more religious freedom than we do is they can go into the schools. In many places here now, we can't. And I know a pastor in our region who used to go into local schools and take religious assemblies. But recently he's been banned to do that in case he upsets the Muslims. So that's closed down in many parts of England, but they can still do that out there. In fact, there's one or two churches have religious educational teachers that they find a place in the school to do just that sort of thing, to talk to the children and take the assemblies. So there are ways and means, and the Spaniards are very good at finding the corners and cracks in the pavement to get into. Any more questions?
Do you find it difficult to raise awareness in the churches about Spain, whereas it seems to me that Christians in this country seem to leapfrog Europe and think of Asia and Africa and obviously 5 different cultures where the gospel in Europe is so essential, isn't it? I mean, what you've been saying this afternoon. But you find it difficult to get an awareness in the evangelical churches of the need to support your mission?
I understand the question, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there, really. Because when we go to churches and we're talking about mission, I think what comes up immediately is China, Vietnam, and Korea. That's where the missions are, and Africa as well. People somehow don't think that Europe is a missionary destination, but actually Europe is the least evangelized continent in the world, which may alarm some of us. Yes, you leapfrog. You've got it in a nutshell there. People think of mission and they think Europe. No, next one, Asia. So it is a problem, because we need to raise awareness that actually the mission field is on our doorstep. And take Singapore, for example. Most of Singapore is more reached than the UK. So they're sending missionaries to us now. It's astonishing, isn't it? But yes, there is this need right on our doorstep.
Literature.
Oh yes, please avail yourself of the literature which we left in where we're having coffee later. And there's all sorts of literature there that's free to take, and we don't want to take it back home. So there's one called The Grain in Spain. It's a book that we just recently republished, and it's like a potted history of the Spanish Gospel Mission. So if you can't think of any questions now, but you get home and you think, well, I should have asked this and that, if you take that book, it's almost certain to be in there, the answer. And there's another magazine that comes out twice a year called Spotlight on Spain. Again, we can send that to the church if you'd like one of those, and the recent prayer updates. Just go out and then take what you like. And we'll be out there, so if you have any further questions, please ask. What do we do now, Dennis?
Perhaps we close. We'll just close, shall we?